everybody, here we are today talking about the Buffalo Sabres and who they hired as their new head coach as of yesterday. So before we get into that, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or hockey, whatever the case may be. That being said, let's get on into it. So about a week after the Buffalo Sabres fired Don Granato as their head coach, they end up making a new hire yesterday. And will it be somebody that you would think is younger? Is it going to be somebody that's been in the league for a minute but hasn't got an opportunity to be head coach? No, it's Lindy Ruff, a guy that is 64 years old and is a very familiar face with the Buffalo Sabres because he coached them for almost 15 full seasons as it went from 1997 through 2013. Just kind of a crazy deal how it ended up going back to him. But either way, this is a coach that has seen his former club in turmoil since he left, as in the following 11 seasons, they've had 7 head coaches. And if you look at their points percentage in that time, none have been better than Ruff, as this club has yet to make the playoffs, even after he left over a decade ago. And for the man with over 550 wins with the team, this certainly is an interesting move to go back to a very familiar head coach. And I think there are some things that kind of stick out here. One of the big things being that they go out and they get a big name head coach for the first time since Dan Bylsma. Now, Dan Bylsma ended up being a coach for the Pittsburgh Penguins for a while. He was a Stanley Cup champion with them back in 2009, and the Penguins were able to go to the conference final, I believe, one other time too. However, he was only the coach for Buffalo for 2 seasons, and they weren't terrible years. They finished with 81 points and 78 points. However, they weren't, anything to get too excited about. And while the Sabres ended up bringing some of their head coaches, this is certainly a big name in Ruff. While he's not a Stanley Cup champion with the Sabres, still somebody that's been able to be a proven winner. In fact, in his time with Buffalo, his teams went to the playoffs 8 times. He had 5 seasons with 95 points or more. They made it to the Eastern Conference Final 4 times. If I did that correctly and looked at all the seasons, they won their division twice, and they made it to the Stanley Cup Final on 1 occasion. And like I said, bringing in a coach with his pedigree is going to be big. The team could be using some of those things where you could point as the head coach and say, you see those banners, you see those accomplishments, I was there for that. I was helping guide this team, and we're going to get you to be where those guys were. And I just think that it's kind of neat to be able to have a lot of these younger players that are on one of the league's youngest roster to say, when you weren't even born yet, I was coaching this team and getting them farther than they've been in decades. The second takeaway is that it takes off a little bit of pressure from the front office. Now, I'm not a sports expert by any means, but I do know Buffalo, being a team that has been able to make the playoffs in 13 seasons, having some years where they were really bad, not exactly great for getting people to buy tickets and go watch the games, especially if it's not like a weekend night. If it's a Tuesday night game and they're going to be playing, let's say, the Rangers. Now, that's a bad example, but let's just say if you're a hometown fan saying, I want to go see them play and win, that might not be the game you want to go out there and pay tickets and pay money for, I should say. But by getting coach here, they have another reason to go back. They're going back to the glory days. They're going back to when they were relevant. And I know you could probably argue that a period long before this, they were relevant. But still, looking at the past 20-something years of the team, Ruff has been a huge part of that and was part of the more successful side. So with the front office saying, hey, we got this guy that you remember probably from when you were a kid or when you were a young adult, that gives you kind of that nostalgia, that feeling that everything's going to be all right since everything hasn't been all right for over 10 years. We are appeasing you. Now we get to have a little bit of pressure taken off of us. And I'm not saying that the front office itself still doesn't have things to worry about. Yes, they certainly do, trying to be relevant, trying to win games, and trying to, again, in that playoff drought, are all going to be at the top of their minds. But it does buy you just a little bit of time to get the fans off your back, to maybe even get them in the seats, to get them cheering for you instead of cheering for you to get fired. And so by getting Ruff brought back in here, even if it's just for 20 games or something like that, maybe you buy yourself an opportunity to figure out what exactly you want to do with the club. And if it goes even further where they're able to have a decent-ish start where they're still around the wild card spot, fans will be showing up and you might be able to get a little aggressive towards the trade period. And then the third takeaway is that the Sabres are going to be wanting him to do something similar that he did in New Jersey, and that is developing a young team and turning them into a playoff side. Now, the situations are always going to be a little bit different, but New Jersey had a lot of younger guys that he was a coach of and able to get them to their best regular season just last year. I will be honest though, there are some problems already sticking out where there are some similarities. The Devils gave up the most first goals in the game, or opening goals in a game, I believe, in NHL history through like all the way back to the 20s this year. The Buffalo Sabres also were a team that ended up allowing the most first period goals, so both teams ended up having a problem starting the game off on the right foot. If Ruff can't figure that out in New Jersey, who's to say that he necessarily figures it out in Buffalo? As again, both of these teams are dealing with their own issues. However, the Devils dealt with some defensive issues in the neutral zone. Buffalo kind of dealt with some of those things as well. But the potential is there, and you see the opportunity. I know a lot of people are going to be scared looking at how New Jersey fell off this year, but I do think they're going to bounce back. They dealt with some injuries to some core guys early in the season. Timo Meier had a rough year. He ended up having shoulder surgery, or scheduled to have shoulder surgery this season after it's all done in the coming days. So how many of these guys played hurt? The goalie situation wasn't perfect either. New Jersey could be a team that, again, Ruff would say, man, I wish I would have been able to stay with him had we been able to get another year. But just like New Jersey, you see a lot of potential with the offense in Buffalo. You see a lot of young guys that could break out. Tage Thompson is probably going to lead the way here. But other players, too, that aren't even just young guys. Alex Tuck, who's not even 30 yet, but he's older than some of these other players on the roster. He is a core guy. You know, again, the Buffalo Sabres connection is kind of cool to see. He will probably be an offensive producer for this side next year as they're trying to figure out exactly what to do with these younger players, what situations to put them in, when to put them in when the games are looking like they could be blowouts or they could be something where it's a close game. All of these things are going to be a factor, but with these younger sides and how explosive the offensive was, not this season, but the season prior, I see a lot of potential. We know that the power play could possibly be very good. We know that there's a lot of young players on the blue line that you could morph into being a very good side. There are a lot of questions, again, about how the defensive game will work, but if Ruff can get back to the old achievements that this team had, winning division, I'm not even saying it's going to be, step one. Getting back to the playoffs would be step one for this side at the moment. Then he would be immortalized for this team, because while the Sabres have been able to hire or rehire other coaches as well, not even that long ago, Nolan was one of them, Ruff is, of course, the cream of the crop at the moment. Now, of course, it's always easier to bring in a guy that had success before and say he's going to do it again for us, and it does seem like they are out of being in that bottom feeder status, but to be able to jump even from the playoff hopefuls into the playoff legitimate teams is going to be tough. And then it's going to be even more difficult if things turn out really positive for this team, if they're able to go from playoff hopefuls to being legitimate playoff contenders to being legitimate contenders. That is definitely a lot to ask for this team next year, and I would not expect them to win the Stanley Cup. If they did, we would, of course, have to do something really ridiculous, like buy a Sabres jersey of somebody that's just getting like no ice time or just had a really rough year. I don't really know what we do, but Lindy Ruff is back for the first time since I was in middle school that he coached a game. I was in 7th grade, so we're going to see exactly after all this time with these other teams in Dallas and in New Jersey, if he's going to be able to bring back the feel-good times to Buffalo. What are your thoughts exactly on this? Let me know down below in the comments. I do apologize not being able to get a video out yesterday, just kind of a crazy day. The playoffs, of course, are crazy as well. I didn't get back till later last night, but I did want to talk about it as we are getting near the playoff games tonight. Anyway, leave your thoughts down below in the comments. Please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe. Have a great night. And you go love hockey, all right. Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.